We're going to spend about an hour. I'm going to go over part 2. So there's some catch-up work that I want to bring your attention to, and then we're going to try to get them a lot of the emergency preparedness center stuff done so that next month we can do some cleanup, and we should be in pretty good shape no later than June, I'm hoping, because there's so many things moving rapidly right now. It's difficult to stay engaged and figure out where I am. All right.
This is Maggie. Is it possible just to have the current slide on instead of the current slide in the next slide?
Yes, it sure is. All I got to do is go fix my mess.
Okay, thank you. Because the current one is a little small.
Well, no, you just need to tell me that I screwed up.
Thank you.
All right. Can you see the big slide now, Maggie?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay. Sorry. Thanks for letting me know. It's always my anxiety is, do I get this thing right? All right. So we have, there's going to be, unfortunately, some rewrite, and I suspect that the department's going to try to rapidly shove them in for a July adoption. And I'll talk about what I think is going to happen. It won't be 100% that I can prove it, but we'll see what we can do. Right. This is not, I don't know why this stays not so good here. Okay. One of the things that I want you guys to give yourself a break. You've been working so hard and for 24 months. And one of the things that I've recognized in talking to all the administrators is we're not doing a very good job of take care of yourself. So just recently, a friend of mine that works in mental health for wellness sent me this list. So again, you'll have them in your slide deck. But just at the moment, just close your eyes and think of something really pretty so you can pay attention to me for the next few minutes and absorb things that I want you to really understand. Okay. All right, we are working feverishly in 3 different legislative things. So right now, today, as it is going on right now, Eileen's in the middle of this, is Senate Bill 22-154. There was federal outcry about how seniors were treated during COVID, families, inability to see them, lack of vaccinations, lack of staff vaccinations, facilities not having ventilation systems. I mean, from one thing to the next. And then the whole noise around that if a older adult was sent to the hospital, they were given no treatment. So this is going to be a major discussion for a long time. Some legislators, one is particularly, felt that a family member wasn't treated appropriately. Family member did pass away, we think, and wrote this legislation. And she has been really horrible to deal with and talk about it and try to work our way through. And so there's been quite a few different amendments, and the Republicans that got common sense have, Eileen's been talking with them and trying to get a halfway. What I've been saying to Eileen for a week and a half now is I just want this bill to blow up, and we're going to have to really push hard, because it will now, after it comes out of this committee, will go to the combined House and Senate for a vote. And then what I think, this is my personal belief, is we're going to have to find a way to get Bennett to veto it. Not Bennett, but Polis, because this bill is not, one, it's not appropriate. 2 is we haven't even recovered from COVID, or we're not even 100% close to being recovered from COVID. And then they want to lay on more craziness. There is also a bill, I don't think it's gotten out of committee, that nursing homes will be open at all times, including us, no matter whether there's a pandemic or not, to families. One of the saving graces that I didn't have any deaths for the first 11 months of the COVID, of the people that I was working with, is because we didn't let anybody in, and we were very protective and kept everybody safe. So I'll be testifying on that if it gets out of committee. And then the next one is they want to really start fining the industry for non-compliance. And one of the big ones right now, the state's been out looking at waivers, especially religious waivers, and challenging them. If you do not have a full policy, protections, risk management, all of that. And so I know that we're going to have to do some more work on that next month, though I was trying to avoid it. Senate Bill 22-187 is where the Older American Act came out of the feds down to the states, and we are modernizing it. There's a lot of good things in this bill. There's some things that are concerning because it's going to be very different than what we've ever done. And it's housed at the Department of Human Services, which doesn't have a lot of trust by the professional world that works in this lane. And I was at a meeting earlier today, but unfortunately I kept getting interrupted, so I didn't get to hear the middle of it. But I do want to give you a heads up. There is going to be June the 16th in Colorado Springs, an all-day celebration of the Older American Act and where we go next, and who are the players and how can we make this really work and sing. If you can open that day up, if you can get coverage and can attend, let me know. And as soon as I have a formal notice of the start time, which I believe is going to be 9, I think it's going to end at 3:30, and it'll be at the Antlers Hotel in downtown Colorado Springs. It's free. The only thing you'll have to pay for is your lunch, though there may be some donations for lunches, and that may also end up being free. But right now, the state, you can't use state funds to pay for food. So they're working through that little challenge. And then the last bill that I want to bring to your attention, PACE is being overhauled. The Denver PACE Innovate program is being overhauled, and there's legislation to that. The Colorado Springs PACE is doing well. The Loveland PACE is doing really well. And we're just keeping a good eye on that to see what's going to happen, because we need PACE back able to start enrolling people. We have a lot of people that need the service. All right, I want to also bring your attention to a tag that has showed up in the last 10 days, and that you must have a disclosure of your last inspection. And so like elevator inspections is kind of how I'm thinking about this. And I would put it up. If you like to see our last inspection, please ask the administrator for the copy to review. It's also on the website, or you can, give them a piece of paper saying this is how you can review inspections for our facilities. And so Kala brought this forward, and I was really glad because, like I said, I've seen this tag now 3 times in the last 10 days. All right, so I want to bring it back around where I really wanted to be. All right, you as the owner of the property, please make sure you have the right business property insurance in place, and make sure that your exemptions make sense. There is lawsuits are starting to populate against facilities that lost people who died in their facilities, and a staff outbreaks. And so, like I said, it's going to be really very concerning to me about how we're going to get through this. And some of you that have a triple net lease, make sure you have insurance in and out. You're responsible for both if you have a triple net lease. And then the other thing is to that we will work on more, but I'll just plant a seed in your head, is that if you have to evacuate, what's next? And we'll be talking more about that. Okay. Some quick COVID catch-ups. I did record because I couldn't fit in to do it live. So I did a COVID update about 8-9 days ago. About 10 people have looked at it so far. It is free to you. It's on our YouTube channel, or you can email me and I'll get you the jump to it. And so I tried to catch up COVID as much as I knew at that point, in addition to the few things I'm going to give you today. One of the confusing pieces to people is whether you have to test and whether you have to do rapid testing and PCR testing, or just PCR testing. And it all depends on your county. So they're all different. So like Denver went back to in the middle, and we'll probably be red again before the weekend. So there's a new strain of Omicron, and there is a marriage between Delta and Omicron that has shown up in the mountain towns. That one is the same one that's in New York, and the same one that's been plaguing China. And so people are anxious. So if every week you need to check your mapping and you need to track this and then follow the policies. And I gave you the spreadsheets of where they are so that you can stay on top of this. I don't think this testing is going to change at the moment due to the lawsuit that the feds have put on and the federal court saying, that they can start unrolling COVID restrictions and COVID mandates. So it's a super confusing time out there. I would stick with what Colorado's got posted and you'll stay safe that way. So there may be some upset people because if you go back up to the high, middle, or go on up to the high, you're going to have to go back to testing. And that'll be, and follow the tables. So most of it is for people that are not have vaccine 1 and 2, and those are 2 to 4 weeks apart, and booster 1 is not part of that. Now, booster 1 will be part of it in the very near future because booster 2 is available 4 months after booster 1 for high risk people. And right now it is not mandatory. You can choose to do it if you wish, or you can choose not to do it. But you got to be super careful with your documentation. So I can't beg you enough to please use part 2 of your COVID notebooks. Track this baby. If you just want to write it on plain paper, this date we were this, no testing this week, or this date we moved to this. We did PCR testing on all eligible or all residents that needed it. And then if you have anybody with any symptoms of any sort, rapid test them, though I'm not particularly crazy on the results of rapid testing and the validity of them. All right, internal policy on your waivers. States reviewing them, as I said it when I opened this up. And I know we're going to do a better job than what we did back in October when we sent those in. And we may have to do some more revision and some risk management revisions. And so I'm going to think about that and work on this between now and the next time I give another talk on how we're going to handle this situation. All right, so I wrote this right after the last class when we were doing the taping. And what I want to bring out of this is that medical exemptions are hard to get, and there's very few being approved. So even people that have autoimmune diseases, they are requesting people to have Pfizer and not Moderna. And because again, long haulers are really starting to stack up and they're going to cost us a ton of money. Oh, and then back to COFI and EMR. Peter said yesterday that people are not filling out COFI and EMR completely. So make sure you get all the fields. Okay. All right. New RCFs, and put that in your book. And then the slide decks can be your policies between publications. And so those come out, they just came out today. If you didn't get them, let me know. I'll be glad to forward them to you. And then make sure that you have a vaccine clinic by 6/4. And that will be for booster 2, booster 1 for those that are still in that time frame, and any staff or residents that are not vaccinated. If you people to change their mind to get the vaccines, don't forget your permission sheets to have those ready when the vaccine folks come, because they complain to state that people aren't ready and it's messing up their timing. Okay. All right, so this particular tool is refreshed every week. How are we doing? You had a really high spike in February. We're low right at the moment. I don't anticipate that being for very long. We had 87 people in the hospital as of this morning, and we've had 0 deaths though in our industry. We have had deaths, but not COVID primary deaths. I am talking to university. I had a great conversation with them yesterday, and they're doing a research project to look at people that had COVID very early, in the very early days, and then how long did they live, or are they still living, what symptoms they have, how their thyroid's doing, and how their bones are doing. And so out of COVID is coming something good, but we won't see the answers on that for a while. All right, so let me get back to business. Okay, so we're talking about your emergency preparedness plan and operations. Okay, so you have property insurance and renter's insurance. Make sure it's going to meet your needs, because the fires have taught us already that smoke damage, if you have smoke damage due to a fire in the area, renter's insurance is not going to cover it unless you have a rider. So I changed my house insurance to put a rider for smoke damage and water damage if the Air Force Base decides to flood us again. So again, review what you have, make sure that it's going to cover. The other thing I encourage you to do, every one of you as an administrator and an owner, you should have personal liability insurance. I have it as a rider on my homeowner's insurance. It's not that expensive and it's pretty good coverage. I didn't take the highest, I took a middle one, but you need some personal liability insurance. The reason this is going to be important is that you can be sued independently of your business in some cases if you didn't follow all the directives of the COVID directives. We have about 14 or 15 facilities in the state that did nothing, zero, nothing. And I'm very worried about what's going to happen to them. We also have had multiple facilities closed in the last month. And part of it is because they didn't do the COVID guidelines. All right, so let's talk about what constitutes a natural disaster. We didn't see natural disasters very much for a long time. We had a big flood in the 80s, and then we'd had little minor floods, but nothing as crazy as that one was. And then we had the Thompson flood, and then we've had more flood issues in different parts of the country. And the snow melt right now is about 94% snowpack, but we're warmer. We're a whole month ahead in warm for Colorado. And so they're very worried that the snowpack is going to come down faster than what they want, and that we could have some issues with flooding. They also cleaned all that disaster up down in southern Colorado with that gold mine mess, and all that water is now declared safe to use. But they're concerned about if the floodwaters come into that area, that mine is not totally mitigated yet, and it could happen again. We're having fires coming out of our ears. Just on the news yesterday, we had 4 fires across the state. Luckily, all of them were contained fairly fast, but I think we're going to have another high fire season. Tornadoes, pretty much of a norm in Colorado. Probably, according to the weather folks, we're going to have more of that. And then we have a risk of earthquakes starting again, because the fault that runs by Rocky Flats has done some shifting. And so we'll see what happens if we have more than a little bit of a tremor. So these are some of the kinds of natural disasters. All right, so how does the state manage natural disasters? Well, one is this chick named Mickey that I met about 10 years ago. And this is her phone number. She does the whole state of Colorado. So she's she's a geologist. And she's really pretty good at all this stuff and understands it quite well. So she guides and puts things together, and it's called EMAPS. She has 5 areas that she puts energy into: prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery, in that order. And so right now, you probably have seen on the news, they put some new fire things up in Aspen to detect fires faster. That's a prevention type thing. Larimer County's doing some new things. Weld County's doing some new things. Pueblo's doing some new things. So you're seeing the state trying to put some preventative measures in place. And all the way down to Superior Fire, which we have not even begun to do decent recovery. One of the things that I'm aware of that happened in Superior Fire, there was 3 gentlemen that had really old homes in Superior, been there a long time. They had let their house insurance go. So when the fire took down their houses, they had nothing. And they can't get FEMA dollars, because one of the requirements of FEMA is that you have house insurance. So they're left in the dust to rebuild only on their own bucks. And they're all older. They're late 70s, 80s. So I suspect they'll just sell their land and not rebuild. We'll see what happens with that. Okay. Now, SEMA is the medical side of emergency preparedness. And I hope you will find a little time to look at their website. And then your county takes medical direction from SEMA. So the Colorado lady, Mickey, she does the physical plant stuff, the land, the roads, that kind of stuff. And SEMA is the medical side of the business. So counties. So each county then is responsible for their territory under those two groups. So I live over by Glencoe Road near C470 area on the back side of the base. And when we got all that rain and water, their potable water lakes were overloaded. The two overflow lakes were overloaded. So they decided to release their water, and it came into our neighborhood. And most of the basements, and I live there's about 55 homes in my little section. We got between 12 and 15 inches of water in our basements in about 3 hours. And nobody could figure out what in the heck happened. None of us had pumps. So 3 of us got on looking for pumps, and we had to drive to Golden and up to Boulder to get pumps. And we had to put 2 in my daughter's house to get all the water out of her basement. So the 55 homes we collectively sued, and we finally got a settlement to pay for all of the damage that water caused and all the cleanup work. But it took us several years to get that done. So in most counties, sheriff departments are responsible for emergency planning. So here's some key concepts, okay? Please manage your grounds and mitigate for fires. So trash pickup, not having weeds, not having dry plants or dead plants around your property, your fence lines, anything that could ignite. And then if you have smokers, you've got to have fire retardant trash cans and bins in the key areas. You have to have one on entry back into the house and in all of their bedrooms. So again, this is a tag, and you've got to, usually most of the surveyors say, if you have them in before I leave, I'll take the tag off. So you've got to have this. We have had numerous fires started by residents smoking and putting a hot butt in their clothes and then dumping it in the trash. So this is a really important thing. If you're going to have smoking in your house, please take this extra mile. The fire retardant trash cans are both on Amazon. They're at Home Depot and Lowe's. Okay. You should have your annual fire inspection certificate copy in your QA book. Make sure you have your receipt for payment to your county that you paid for this inspection. I'm seeing them run between $350 and $550 for the residentials, and then a lot more for commercial properties. But you need to be able to get that because the department is now asking for you to send those in and put them in your files if they don't have a copy. Okay. Now, fire and safety have regulations just like everybody else. It's called Chapter 8, and the safety part is in Part 3 of their chapter. So I gave you the jump so that you can go look at it. And then you can see what their noise is. South Metro has been the lead in the state for fire and safety for a long time. And they continue to be the drivers, and they don't like our residential programs. They think that they get called too much to pick up people, and they also think that staff are not equipped to handle emergencies decently enough. And unfortunately, in their district, they've had multiple fires. One of them started from a thing in this attic that was supposed to let them know that the house was on fire, and had the neighbors across the street not seen the house was on fire, they were totally clueless because it did set off the fire alarm. That was one big one. There was a lady smoking in a commercial building down in their district, and she hadn't smoked in years, was wearing oxygen, and she not only injured herself and had massive burns, but she caught her apartment on fire and several other apartments in the building, and they had a lot of smoke damage. And then there was another fire in their district here just recently, and one of the residents set the fence on fire. So like I said, to them, that's way too many. And so they're leading the cause, and they're very vocal about mitigation. Okay. Second thing is your fire drill section. So make sure they're monthly. Make sure you're doing a QA on them. How did people do? I was at a community, and that one of the people refused to go. And so they documented the person didn't go, but they didn't do anything about it. So they didn't document that they had a face-to-face meeting with her and went over why this is important, and then, put into their quality plan that, this is something they have to address in resident meetings and in personal protection. And we may have to go into the even where you have to sign that you agree to participate in drills. And so I've always said my whole career, yeah, if I ever get to live in an assisted living, don't wake me up for a fire drill. I'm not going. But I guess I'm going to have to change my mind. The other one that I see, and it's one of the things I always look at, is when I go in homes, what does the fire extinguisher look like? When was it read last? And is the monthly check done? And is it full? And so that card, don't throw those darn cards away. They go into your QA for that year in that folder. And that's your proof in the pudding that you guys are doing it. First aid kits, go back over to chapter 7. Make sure you got all the add-ons, validate that you got all the supplies. And then I would have some sort of QA tool checklist and assign somebody that they're responsible. And then if they use the first aid kit, then again, it's got to be replenished. So you've got to figure that story out. You need a thermometer you're not currently using, but it's actually a good one. And get a battery check. I don't put the batteries in them. I usually tape them onto it or put them in a little baggie so they don't get that nasty blue stuff around them. But you need to make sure you have a thermometer. If you have anybody on oxygen, make sure you have an oxygen sensor. And then I have yet been in a facility that has an eye wash kit. And they're portable kits. They're $14 at Walmart, and that's all you need, except for those of you that have a big facility. You're going to need a bigger eye wash kit, or you're going to need several portable kits, because if you have backsplash of anything, you need to be able to wash your eyes. And I'll give you an example. It just happened to me last week. They put new surfaces on the streets out here. And so when I was parking the car, the wind picked up some residue of that junk they put down, and a piece got in my eye. It took all day. It kept bugging me. I couldn't get it out. And then I finally had to go home because my eyes kept watering so bad. And it took me about 4 hours of flushing before I could get that little tiny piece of junk out of my eye. So if I'd had an eye wash kit, it would have went better. And so I think I'm going to buy one, just put in my own house. If you have fire suppression and you have the tanks, there, you have to do an annual inspection and water exchange. Again, I was at a home and the water had total molded. So called Mr. Sprinkler to come out and look at that with them and figure out how to deal with that issue. Okay. All right, so let's talk about thinking through how you would leave. Well, number one, don't forget that you have to have a house cell phone. This is not for the residents, it's for you guys. And, and you can use it, you can make up the rules on and what else you want to do with it. But you should have a current contact list of all your employees, be signed up for the emergency alert system, and key contact numbers and key agencies should be in that contact thing so that you can function. Make sure you got a portable charger that functions. And you can do the little hand one you can do the car one, you can do whatever you want. Just make sure that you can charge your phone up. And then one of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do is buy some cloud space and put some important papers in there. Some of the things that I think in today's world, what we've experienced, you should be able to exchange your MARs from your pharmacy. You should be able to access those. You should have a current census list, the vaccination information, emergency contacts minimally in the cloud storage. There is some free cloud storage and there's some that you have to pay for. And it feels like a lot of work until you really need this, and you will be so blessed that you could get right to it. All right, the other project for community project, and it can count as an activity, is you got to do something as a tote to go or a pillowcase project. And I just rolled up a list of stuff that Denver has really been pushing in the community and out on their emergency numbers. They put it out about once a month. They've been having Saturday meetings in community centers, junior highs, high schools, and same thing in Arapahoe County, trying to get people to go because when people had to break out of Superior, they were trying to pack and move and rock and roll. And then some people just left with nothing. So you are responsible for your residents, and these are the minimal things that you should have. And then somehow or another figure out how to grab people's eyeglasses, hearing aids, and dentures, and not leave them in the facility. All right, you need to have some sort of locker. I prefer the military Go Pack on wheels, and it stores under a bed really easy, or upright in a closet, and would have at least this amount of stuff in it. And then you could easily pack rapidly all the residents' medications. Keep a box of quart bags, and you can put resident medications in it and a Sharpie, and you can write very quickly the resident's name, and then you can go to the cloud to give meds. Add some things that are going to make life easier for you. So some disinfectants, baby wipes, extra gloves, a few face shields, and 2 or 3 paper gowns. If you have all ambulatory people, and if you have people that you have to do more hands-on, you're probably going to want more. All right, so you have a April-May resident meeting. It's time to start talking about, if we had to evacuate, why we need you to participate with us. We are going to do a practice run or 2 over the summer, kind of get our, iron out the kinks, and then you've got to figure out transportation. So when the 2 facilities had to evacuate in Superior, they had nothing thought up. They did have sister facilities, and they could take some of their people, but not all their people. So one of the workers' husband is a bus driver for the school district, and he knew who to call. And so they were able to get the school buses. The school buses had to drive through fire to get to the seniors. And then in one building, because it wasn't exactly evacuation orders, they had the seniors sitting for an hour or so before they evacuated. Not sure what that process thinking was. Probably me would have just, let's go, and we may end up coming back at 10 o'clock tonight, but let's get out of the way, why it's not too chaotic. So you need to think this through. Where would you go? How would it look? How are you going to get people to go there? Because having company cars and company buses is super expensive on the insurance side and the liability side. So a great deal of the small ones just can't. It's just not going to build in on the finances. So the process, and what I want you to think about is, what would you do? How would you execute it? And then if that didn't work, what would be plan B? And plan B to me is, we have a lot of churches in Colorado. So, I think maybe some churches could be helpful, maybe a volunteer group if you have a Rotary or a military group in your area. Like we have a great big huge thing just a quarter of a mile down the street from where I live, of old vets that like to get together, and they play cards and bingo, and then they have a bar on the campus and stuff. And they would be great help, because they're trained in this. Even when they're older, they're trained in this. So I think about your area where you live, and what could you start thinking through, and just think about it for right now. And because next month you're going to put it into an action plan. Okay. All right. Next problem, money. You've got to put some money away for 72 hours. So how much, if you had to rent rooms for everybody, what would that cost you? If you had to buy 3 squares a day, what would that cost? If you had to go out and get pull-ups, because you didn't put them in, didn't bring enough, or you had to go and, get drinks or whatever, kind of think about how much money you would need. Now, you can tackle this in several ways. You can put a special savings account that you can transfer your checking or your debit card, or you can have a specific credit card that is nothing other than for an emergency activation, and use it that way. But don't expect the state to pay for this. And that was one of the things that we learned, again, out of the last several disasters, is the state's very clear, this is your responsibility, not ours, and we're not your bank. So one particular person I know got in quite a bit of a row with the state over this issue. All right, so April, we want to execute and get things started. We want to get the cloud up. We want to think about money, and you want to start using your cell phone and using some of the apps so that you can function. and be, as prepared as possible. You'll never be 100% prepared. There's no way. You just act off the cuff. I know when that water hit our neighborhood, I was here actually. My daughter called me and told me what was going on. Took me an hour to get home. And then when we figured out we needed sump pumps, took me 4 hours to get to Golden, which normally would be maybe 90 minutes at the most. And so, like I said, you never totally know what you're going to need to do, but you are going to have to figure it out. One of the things I didn't put on here, many of your staff have families, and that's going to be first and foremost in their mind. And so when we had the big flood up in the Thompson Canyon, and I did a lot of work for Red Cross in those days, a lot of the volunteers brought their teen kids with them. And then the city, the little town up there, took care of little kids. And so that helped a bunch. And one of the churches up there took care of some of the little kids and kept them entertained. So, don't forget that your employees also are going to have a panic attack about their own personal circle and what they're going to have to do. All right, so we're going to tie up next month. So please have your COVID notebook in pristine condition. If you don't think you're there yet and you need to talk to me, pick up the phone and call. I'll walk you through. I've got tons of stuff. And if you're missing stuff, we'll figure it out. But because COVID notebooks, people that had them in place when the states showed up, have been getting really good feedback. And we just got this one little stupid thing today about, did you submit a waiver because you're allowing religious exemptions? And I hadn't thought about keeping track of that. So, we'll go and fix that issue. Look at your drills. Are they doing well, or are you having challenges? You got opportunities to do something better? Do you need to tweak it? And then just take a piece of paper, write it up. You don't have to make it pretty. Stick it in your fire section, okay? One of the things I've done different in quality in this industry this last year is I have a base quality management plan that I've written for a lot of communities, and kind of using the same elements and talking about them. And then I kicked it up a notch early in COVID and took it to a new, what they call SCUM in the quality world that I used to live in, and made it into a metric model. So I've for a lot of the facilities, I've updated their base program, and then we do a metric based off of identified needs. And then you identify them by color. So holy cow, I got a lot to do here. It's red. I want to get it down to yellow. In the next 30 days, I want it ready to go within 60 days. That is metric planning or SCUM planning. And it doesn't have to be super formal, but you all know, I know all of you know things that you'd like to do better. And so it's just a matter of writing it down and deciding what's on first, what's on second, what's on third. But everything I've talked about today, so you're going to have a 3-part emergency preparedness plan: COVID, fire and safety, and evacuation. Okay. Those are your 3 parts. And if you can get all that under your belt and got it done, then you can just do your everyday stuff that you have to deal with. Okay. And then I also wrote on here, please understand that all of these people have protective oversight policies that impact our industry. And so that you may be under more than one. And you need to understand what their role and what their viewpoints are. Some of them overlap, some of them are very independent. And then look at your county level in the codes and what that would look like. All right. One last thing, if you find any extra time, we want you to go back and pull your PTP if you do Medicaid. And I want you to look at it. And is it going to work okay? So before COVID hit, I was in a tug of war on this PTP thing, on the 24-hour visitors and the right to do drugs and the right to have sex partners in your home and the right to bring in sex trafficking partners in your home, and just kept going around and around. And when I couldn't get the state to move, I decided to start working on the feds. I'm going back to that because, again, the same things still bug me that bug me then. But we're under the final phase. You have a chance to weigh in and say, Even though you would like the residents to, call this their home, it is a therapeutic environment. And that's the key words I've been using. It's a therapeutic environment. Therefore, to keep all our residents safe, Ms. Spencer, we cannot meet these criteria in mental health adult care facilities because we've got to keep our whole residents safe. And a resident that is at that capacity and able to live in the community should go back to living in the community. With that handshake, I've been also on a fuss with upper management at HCBS to get our transitional housing back, where people could have a little more freedom. So it's like a sobriety home concept, and they can come and go, and they can have their visitors, and they can make decisions. And the rules are very minimal in sobriety, except that you can't have alcohol or drugs in the house. And you have to complete the program that costs $11,000 a month. So I'm trying very hard, and I may be calling on some of you guys to weigh in. But if you have a few minutes and you can weigh in on this, your voice is going to matter, because they just think that it's no big deal, because these kids, they're great lawyers, but they've never worked a day in this industry. They don't have a clue what it's like to have a chronically mentally ill person in your home, or to have a severely impaired senior that is not making great decisions. And so that, they are impulsive, like, toddlers and 4 and 5-year-olds. Though I did hear today that an 8-year-old's the worst age to raise. I don't remember that so much, but I do remember the 3 and 4s. So anyway, if you have a minute and you can help weigh in on this, I would appreciate you putting your voice in. Okay. All right, and to finish this up, I have a lot of tools. I have a lot of stuff, and all you got to do is ask. I will share it with you. I will give it to you. I want you to be successful. And then if you get the state and you need help answering the state formally on any correction plan, let me know. I've got a bunch of that mapped out too, so that it doesn't take so long. We just use some standardized language and interventions and action steps. So there's me.